Karen, there's one right here. He was gonna take your seat. Could you move down? Hey, Karen, right here.
Should we let them give intros even though they're late?
Sure. I would just say no. Yeah. Give the intro about yourself and why you're here and what you do. Your dog's on the cancer.
Okay.
My name is Johnny. We just started, my wife and I started estate investing about a year ago. And we got a couple single families, a couple duplexes, and got a rehab going on right now.
And I'm Krista, I'm the other half of that, and now we're working on a flip right now, and we're thinking about doing Airbnb with it when we're done in Northeast.
Cool. One more time, who here has done Airbnb in the past? Raise a hand. Anybody? One.
Done it as we run it or
Participated in Airbnb.
How about you've managed your own, you've owned your own Airbnb property? One. And then who's stayed in one? Most people. Alright, cool. I hate public speaking. This is somewhat terrifying for me. I think I'm going to get into it. Worst that happens is I pass out and I die, I guess. This could be, I'm not the most prepared speaker you'll ever hear. This could be, if you need clarification on anything, this could be somewhat of a dialogue too. If you feel free to interrupt, ask a follow-up question, and we'll do a Q&A afterwards. So currently, where am I at now? I'm a real estate agent with Keller Williams. I started Airbnb in 2015, but at this point I have leases on 4 different apartments. So I just have a traditional residential lease. I have an agreement with the owner. I have the legal right to sublet. And I pay rent like any other tenant and profit anything that I make off the top. I also own 2 single-family homes. One of them is a full-time Airbnb property. The other one I live in. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house hack. I live in this horrible loft area that's super uncomfortable with no privacy for free living and cash flow. 2 of the rooms are rented for $650 a month. My mortgage is about $1,300, so that covers the mortgage. Both of those tenants, one is a Craigslist person who's hopefully normal and fine. She just moved in yesterday. We had a great Craigslist guy who turned out to just be a normal guy for the last year. And then the other is one of my best friends. And then the other person is a stranger, a complete stranger from Airbnb. So it's kind of a good mix. I rent the room on Airbnb for the least I would ever accept for it would be about $800 a month, and I've gotten as much as $1,300 for the month. My minimum stay on the room in my home is 30 days because I just don't want a lot of turnover. But it's a good way to cash flow, probably a yearly average of $800 a month on the place that I live.
Do you ever have vacancy on that, or do you always have it rented?
I have vacancy for sure. I'd say occupancy rate is probably in the last year 75% or so. And this isn't going to be much of a talk about living with strangers and opening up your home for people to live in it. Most of my experience comes with helping investors and turning crappy little apartments in nice neighborhoods into nicer apartments that generate 100% more of the revenue that they would otherwise. So I would encourage, I'm the kind of guy where I've lived in a lot of uncomfortable situations to make and save money. When I started building this business, I would move into an apartment, get it ready, and then move to the next apartment and get that ready and get it rented. So my closet was my car for years. When I go to my grandma's house, I sleep on the carpet because she lives in a tiny apartment. I just don't need a lot of comforts, but I know that I'm the minority. So whether or not you want to invite strangers into your home is something you have to ask yourself, but I'm fine with it. But that's not what this talk is going to be about. So where am I at now? So yeah, I've got the 4 apartments, and then I've got management contracts on 3 other properties. So on Airbnb, you can add what's called a co-host. Somebody who's going to help you, who could do, it's really just a very casual management relationship for a percentage of gross revenue. So I charge between 20 and 40% for my management fee off the gross rent, depending on how much I'm taking on. Those contracts can be canceled at any time. It's essentially just, yes sir?
So when you say gross rent, you mean the rent that goes to Airbnb?
The rent that comes to, I guess maybe I'm assuming people know more than they, so gross rent, everything coming into the property owner, I'm gonna take 20 to 40%, not off of profits, not off of cash flow. If somebody books for $200, I get 40, you get 160. Everything's directly deposited, and it's automatic per booking.
But doesn't Airbnb get something?
Airbnb does, yep. So they charge, I think it's around 12%, and most of that is to the renter. So as a host, I forget what it's at right now. I believe it's between 2 and 3% is what's coming out of my pocket. If I put a place up for $99, they're gonna pay $114 or so, and I'm gonna get 96. Airbnb gets the entire difference. But yeah, definitely look into, I don't exactly know what that, they've tweaked things over the years, and I should pay better attention, but I don't. So I guess some of like my strengths, I think when it comes to taking an otherwise not super profitable rental property and turning it into a something that generates much more revenue than a traditional 12-month lease, that's something that I'm an expert at. When it comes to furnishing a place and making it look really nice with only $1,000 worth of furniture, that's something I'm an expert at. When it comes to weeding out bad guests and problem solving and hospitality in general, I spent a lot of time in the restaurant industry before I started doing this. I'm an expert at that, but when it comes to like running a business, insurance, accounting kind of stuff, I'm probably not your guy. You know, I've got people that help me with that kind of thing, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. But I would say that's where I could use some help from you. So basically my story, I was playing in a band at the time, and I'm going out to drinks with a drummer, and he's like, yeah, my girlfriend's at my house all weekend. She rents her apartment out on Airbnb, and it pays for all of her grad school. This is in 2015. And I'm like, what's that? That sounds amazing. And I'm like, my girlfriend spends every night of the week at my apartment. And so I go online, Airbnb.com, like, oh, how much can you get for your place? And I plug in her apartment, and she was out of town at the time, and I called her. I'm like, hey, have you heard about Airbnb? Like, Amr does it with his girlfriend. They pay all of her tuition. Like, you don't even use your apartment. I should say that this was not completely on the up and up, what we did, and I don't condone what I did. But I'm glad that I did it because it got me to where I am now. I'm not going to tell you where the place was or who the management company was, but I'm sorry. And also, thank you. We put her place on Airbnb. We just clean it, get all the clutter out, take some crappy iPhone pictures. She's paying $600 a month, and a nurse books it for 3 months for like $1,800 or something like that. And I'm like, oh, so this is going to pay my rent, her rent, and we're going to have $600 left. I need more of these apartments, and I need permission to do it. And it's for, like the ethical gymnastics that we went through. We look at the release. Well, it doesn't say we can't do Airbnb. And at no point does it say you can't rent to other people for profit. So, and this wouldn't be subletting, right? No, because it's a different thing. So, anyways, don't do that. But we did it for a short period of time. I started cold calling landlords. And this was a great experience that I'm glad I went through. It helps me as an agent now today. Rejection is not a huge issue for me on the phone. But I called, 200 landlords, and I started networking. And before I knew it, I had 4, 5, 6, 7, I think I got up to like 10 or 12 one-bedroom apartments. Keep in mind at this time, I'm a full-time server and bartender. I do all the cleaning myself. And my girlfriend helps me, but it's pretty much a one-man show. I'm making really a lot of money that I'm not used to be making, and my life is kind of a nightmare. I drive a little Honda Accord, it's like a linen closet, just a really unorganized linen closet. I've got a utility trailer behind it, and I'm cleaning, I'm dealing with stuff, and then I go to work, like waiting tables, like and like, you know, phone's vibrating the whole time. And I made a ton of cash, and I'm glad I did it. But so somewhere in there, I realized that running 12 properties by myself, and I learned about scaling a business. You know, it's like I can't have 12 properties because I need an employee, but I can't afford one. So I realized, like, I either need 6 places or I need 25 places. This middle ground is really not working for me. So the timeline of things, I get my real estate license a while back. I downsize my business to, you know, do a better job for my guests. At this point, I guess I'm really vocal about Airbnb. Everyone who I'm involved with knows that I do it, so my phone's kind of constantly ringing with people who have questions. And I'm trying to merge more into co-hosting and kind of get rid of this financial liability aspect of writing rent every month. I've still got the 4 apartments, but I'm considering either making a new deal with the owners or perhaps moving out entirely. They're still profitable. I'm just trying to scale this business, and it would just be a lot cleaner if I was just collecting management fees and also running properties that I own than having these residential leases that operate in kind of a gray area, I guess. So goals that I have, I mentioned I was a one-man show until 2018. I think I hired my first cleaner. I talked about that nightmare of 2017, doing all the places, serving part-time. Let's see. I guess, so my goals for 2020 is that I'm starting to delegate. I have an operations manager who, once the guest checks in, I really don't want them to know I exist anymore. I've done hospitality for so long, and I just can't, you know, right now, I'm responsible for 12 to 20 people and getting them everything they need to be comfortable. It's no longer worth it to me, and I'm burnt out. I think that if you're fresh and you're financially motivated and you know how to talk to people and you like hospitality, you can do it yourself, absolutely. And I still almost feel like I have the time and the skills to do it myself. I'm burnt out and I don't want to kiss ass anymore. It's like running a million little hotels, and it's driving me insane. So what am I doing in 2020? I've got designated cleaners for each property. I'm training in an operations manager where he's going to have a share of my profit, and I'm still going to focus on revenue building. So what I'm good at is Airbnb is all about strategizing if you want to make money, if you don't want to just put it up there. And Airbnb has something called smart pricing. And just kind of, okay, I'll have a 2-day minimum. Airbnb can tell me what my place is worth, and okay, let's hope we make some money. Like, I'm very active. Every day I'm looking at my calendars, I'm looking at my competition, I'm looking at availability strategies, meaning I want long-term stays, period. The people are more responsible, and when I say long-term, I mean over 7 days. So my median stay is about 30 nights, and my average is 11 nights. So my goal is to get as many 30 to 90-day bookings as possible. Just to give an example of revenue for one particular place, I've got a 2-bedroom, 1-bath on the west side bluff of St. Paul. All expenses in, mortgage, insurance, everything, utilities, probably around $1,350. And all summer I can rent it out for $3,500 a month, and I can usually get somebody to bite and take it for 90 days. So the potential for cash flow when you do the long term is so much greater. And when I say long term, over 7 nights, because it's not as labor intensive, you're not paying so many cleaning fees, and even yes, ma'am.
How do you incentivize people? I mean, how are you getting longer term rentals?
Yeah. So you can set your availability on Airbnb. So a lot of people, I feel, a lot of hosts will go in and they will say, okay, my minimum stay is going to be 2 nights, and then that's how they'll run their place. You can get more specific than that. You can set an availability for a specific time frame. So what I'll do is I'll put a new place up. Right now I've got a couple new properties on, and they've got 30-day minimum stays right now. And I should add too that I try to focus more on getting a quality guest that's going to be low maintenance than let's make as much revenue as possible, and I try to do the same for the people who I work with. But I will put a 30-day minimum. Somebody will book for 45 nights. Then I will say, okay, so if that person's checking out on September 12th, from September 13th to September 20th, I'm going to have a 2-night minimum stay. Then from September 21st to the end of September, I'm going to do a 4-night minimum stay. And then from October 1st till the end of the year, we go back to the 30-night stay. Does that answer your question?
Why do you do the 2 days and then the 4 days and then the 30?
Because a lot of people who book long-term are going to book last minute. It's just kind of the nature of, oh my gosh, my family needs a place tomorrow. Where are we going to live? Or, you're getting transferred. A lot of times an insurance company is paying because the pipe burst, there was a fire, something like that. So I want to be the only guy in my area with an available place from tomorrow until 4 months from now. And it's kind of like gambling, honestly. I don't know if this strategy will work forever, and obviously the Airbnb market is definitely getting more and more saturated. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It used to be way easier. But the reason why I kind of do that staggered booking is because of the last minute nature of booking long-term stays, and I want to have an open calendar. And if you look at all my calendars, my occupancy rate is much higher than the market average. I think I'm running probably around like 85% or so, and I think in the Twin Cities it's about 55. So I know that what I'm doing is working. But you look at my calendar in the past and it's mostly full. You look at my calendar in the future on a lot of properties and it's mostly empty. Of course, if everyone in this room starts doing that all over the Twin Cities, it won't work anymore. So, a couple of you can take that and do it. That's a trade secret.
Do you incentivize with price for the longer term, or because you did mention that? But
I do and I don't. So on certain properties, and so some of the apartment leases I have are in kind of older 20s brownstones where, and to be very honest, like the people who were willing to work with me at first were probably not the best landlords. The kind of guy you call and he's like, yeah, I don't care what you do with the place. Like, yeah, go for it. You have money? Okay, great. And so on those, I definitely incentivize. I try to be the cheapest monthly rental in a good location. So I will look at the competition. Everyone's charging about $2,500 a month, and I don't know what percentage of Airbnb hosts are focused on getting these longer term stays. I might be an anomaly. Maybe that's why it's working so well for me. So I can pay $900 for this place a month. I know I can get $1,800 on Airbnb because the next cheapest is $2,500. So one of my strategies for a particular type of property, which is a 1-bedroom, small, efficient apartment, is to be the cheapest monthly rental in the area. But it doesn't always work that way. For example, cheapest furnished short-term monthly rental in the area. Yeah. But for the house, for example, that I make $3,500 a month on, it's hard to get people to pay $99 a night for this house because so many other people are renting their houses for the night. So in that case, I'm actually charging people more to book for a month than I am for a night. It's supply and demand, it's goofy, but if my house is the only one available, somebody's gonna take it. So yeah, I was talking about goals. I want to continue co-hosting. I certainly want to help buyers, who are interested in getting to Airbnb, but I would never recommend to a client, to a friend, anyone, to buy a property that works for Airbnb but doesn't work for a long-term rental. Because Airbnb is new, it's getting, the competition is going up all the time. I don't think it's going to be regulated out of the Twin Cities, but who knows, The future is unclear for Airbnb, although I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't think, in 2015 it was like printing money, honestly. Take some pictures, move in the furniture, make $1,000 a month. It's not quite like that anymore. And so I'd like to help buyers with Airbnb goals, but you want to make sure your numbers definitely work for a long-term rental or you have no exit strategy whatsoever. When I'm looking for properties, I'm looking for central locations. I'm looking to be close to hospitals. I'm looking to be close to Ecolab Travelers. I'm all over St. Paul. So I'm trying to get that young working professional who's got a 60-day contract in St. Paul, or a nurse with a living stipend. So close to hospitals is great. 2 properties that I have in Merriam Park, I fill up with children's hospital nurses, and I'm not even that close to Children's Hospital. So whatever Children's Hospital has going on, they have all sorts of contract nurses coming in all the time. So definitely close to medical centers. The bathroom's got to be nice above all else. You can make a living room look better. You can make a dining area, bedroom. And I was focused in this niche of kind of cheap apartments is what I was doing for so long. So I really scrutinized the bathroom because people are going to look at this place as if it were a hotel room. If there's a hair on the toilet seat, you're going to have a problem. If there's a little moisture in the shower, you're going to have a problem. Look at the competition. Running comps is difficult for Airbnb. I know that there are companies out there, AirDNA is one, and I don't know if Rentometer does vacation rentals.
Airbnb, yeah. AirDNA has good info, but if you pay for it, it gets even better.
Okay. I'm not an expert on using any sort of service other than my own speculation and experience. So I know that there are third-party companies that can help you do this, but I'm not going to talk on them because I've never used one. Anything that's unsightly and weird, think about that weird aunt you have who has a problem with all sorts of things all the time, or whoever that person is in your life. These are the kind of people that are going to be staying in your place. So, if there's something quirky about it, if there's something annoying or unsightly, it's not worth it. It's not worth the headache. Don't do it. Condos, I'm super against condos. Homeowners associations can be brutal. Maybe it's legal this year, it could be legal the next year, and then you have no recourse. Also, I'm just not in the business of upsetting neighbors. I had a place in a little co-op condo community that made money, and both neighbors on each side, you could tell they hated it, and there's so many properties out there. Why make money off the one that pisses off 2 people? So in general, I try to avoid condos. As far as buying, if I'm looking for a property to buy and I want to do Airbnb, I might look for properties that have, what would the term be for something that, like a 4-bedroom, 1-bath? Less desirable properties, but would work in the short term. Something maybe on a busy street. I'm looking from a perspective, you're all investors, you want to get the best deal on a property. You don't want to be bidding against families on desirable homes because it's not going to work. So I think the 4-bedroom, 1-bath, the property on a busier street, something with a tiny yard, these are things that short-term people just don't care about. And that could translate into getting a good deal and making some nice cash flow. I want to talk a bit about hospitality in general. It comes naturally to me. I worked in restaurants for a long time, higher end, bartending, serving, managing, everything. Generally, people want to be heard. If somebody, there's all sorts of times when there's nothing I can do, but I can own it, and I can apologize, and I can put it all on me, even if it's not my fault. I'm so sorry. Even if somebody else dropped the ball, that's completely my fault, and if I were you, I would be very upset. They hear that. There's nothing you can do, but I don't know. I learned a lot of lessons in the restaurant industry that have really translated to helping me run this crazy little business. I say that's my fault all the time. I try to go the extra mile. I do fresh fruit, I do fresh flowers, I do a bottle of wine. On the nicer properties, get a business card. If it's a cramped little apartment, I don't necessarily want my real estate business associated with this apartment, so I don't give them a business card. And I encourage an open dialogue. I say, if there's anything we can do for you, please let us know. The worst thing in the world is to get that Airbnb or that review on Airbnb that says, place was nice, but we didn't have enough plates for our family of 7 or whatever. If you really hammer on before they check in, if there's any household items, if there's anything we can do for you to make you more comfortable, call or text me anytime, day or night. And it's not like you're running all over the place kissing ass necessarily, but it helps, it helps people not be upset, and it creates a dialogue with the guest. I'm not, versed in speaking about Airbnb, but that's basically where I'm at with my business. I'm sure I forgot a lot of pertinent information. Yes, ma'am.
So your goal is to get rid of some of the apartments that you're currently renting?
Correct.
And be more involved with helping other people manage their properties?
Correct. Yep. And I don't know if that might be an emotional response out of fear that really doesn't necessarily have any financial, maybe I shouldn't do that, I guess is what I'm saying. These 4 apartments that I rent, they make money month after month. There's just something about writing the checks to the landlord, where I would rather own the place, because I'm only one man and I can only manage so many places. I would either own the place and be paying down a loan, or have a 0 financial liability stake in another property. And I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Airbnb is making less, and I wish I had more data, because I know that's what you want, numbers, but more and more people are doing it all the time. There's more corporate competition. You have companies that are renting the entire floor of an apartment building and running Airbnb. You have bigger commercial management companies who are getting into it. So I guess I don't want to be the guy with $5,000 of rent on the hook for another year if something happens.
But wouldn't you be that guy if you owned it?
I would, but I also wouldn't buy it if it didn't work for a longer term rental.
Mm-hmm.
But like anything else, it's a risk.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have tactics around getting started in the initial first month? Because I'm literally this weekend I'm gonna be putting it a listing up.
Okay.
So tactics around getting started, getting your first reviews around how to structure the title, description.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about the place, location, size?
Sure. So 1 bedroom, 1 bath. It is South Minneapolis, so very close to the airport, very close to the hospital, the VA hospital. Minnehaha Falls is a couple blocks away. So I think the location is right for potentially business person, or I wasn't thinking about a nurse, but since you brought up that hospital. Yeah.
Are you going to be doing the cleaning yourself?
Hiring it out?
Okay. And have you hired that yet?
No.
Okay. So housekeeping is the bane of your existence when you're in this business. It's the most frustrating and difficult part. It's managing people who make, how do I say this? I pay my cleaners very well. I try to pay at least $20 to $30 an hour. But number one, I would get on Nextdoor.com or Facebook Marketplace and post an ad and interview lots of cleaners, get reviews. get professional photography, whatever you do. Pay the $150. I can refer you to someone who I use all the time. It's an investment that'll pay off in one booking, and you'd be surprised how many people just use your iPhones. Surprised how many people list their house with profile pictures.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of, it's just so stupid. So get your pictures, get your cleaner. Don't accept a one-night booking for the middle of July for $79. Have an availability and pricing strategy. And definitely bend over backwards for your first few guests. I mean, let's put beer in the fridge. Let's put a bottle of wine out. Let's do fresh fruit. Let's do muffins. Really go all out and get those 3, 4, 5-star reviews. I don't know a lot about the algorithms that a lot of hosts obsess about this kind of thing. Where are you in the search, when somebody searches? But I know it has a lot to do with reviews. Other than that, just get really organized. Because I could talk for a long time about my unorganization and how if I just took, and now I have taken these steps, but in the past, like if I had just taken the 2 hours to label a linen closet, interview 5 different cleaners and pick one, and get systems in place. I've got checklists for cleaners now. I've got photos of what every room should look like. So just really obsess over details, and everything will go smoother.
How often do you change the description of the title? I'm just curious, if you play around with it to get different
I don't put a lot, maybe I don't put enough stock into description or title. I try to, I feel like I'm pretty good with my words and I can drum up a pretty attractive paragraph about a place. I like the word charming, just to kind of qualify myself so that you can tell I know sort of what I'm talking about here. You can go to this site, and that's kind of like my host page, and you'll see all the properties I'm currently managing and read my reviews. And you'll see that I like the word charming. I think it's great. In the world of real estate, sometimes it just means cramped and small. But some of my properties are quite cramped and small. So I'm not lying. But yeah, description and title. I would say that photos, price, and reviews are what get people to book.
Sure.
And I don't know how when I book Airbnbs, I'm not looking for a catchy title necessarily. But it's different, I'm not in the necessarily, I don't feel like I'm in the tourism industry because I don't have people who are coming here for a fun vacation typically. Plus we live in the Twin Cities, so we're not exactly like a hotspot for vacations. So in different markets, I bet if you're renting out a beach house, I would assume that maybe a title and description would have a lot more.
Yeah.
But for you got a 1-bedroom. You have an efficient, nice place for somebody to stay in a good location in Minneapolis, but they're not going to be writing their friends about this cool Airbnb they stayed in, right? Or maybe I haven't seen the place, but.
Yeah. And sorry, one more question. I'm just curious, the way that you do this is you describe the place. Would you ever describe because I want to focus on filtering into the target audience that I'm trying to get at my place, which is so the title that I came up with was perfect for couples and business people. That was the title that I chose, rather than focusing on necessarily the property. Have you ever tried anything or heard about doing it?
I see people all the time that have all these kind of buzzwords in the title. Wi-Fi, laptop-friendly workplace, all this kind of stuff. I don't have experience using that kind of stuff. If I was renting I would call it charming mini haha apartment. I probably could be more creative. I also try to under promise and over deliver. So I'm not going to write a glowing review about how amazing a property is unless it's truly an amazing property. I want them to check in with reasonable expectations and then be blown away by, oh my gosh, he's got fruit out for us, because yeah, when people's expectations are too high, if the pictures are too good, you know, you're going to be in trouble. You know, you don't want the wide angle lens showing these huge rooms, and then they get in and it's a 900 square foot home. So yeah, I know that there's. I would scroll through listings, and you'll see all sorts of creative like buzzwords people try to put in their titles, and you could probably get a lot of inspiration from that. And I think if you're trying to attract somebody, I think if you know, saying things like Wi-Fi speeds maybe is something that people care about. I don't know. I'm
Cool. Yeah, no, super helpful. Appreciate it.
Yes.
I was gonna say, so you mentioned cleaning as like number 2 priority when setting up a good Airbnb. So, bit of a personal question, but when you first started doing it, did you clean yourself?
Yeah, I cleaned myself for like 2.5 years.
Okay. And then when you did transition to, you know, kind of outsourcing the cleaning, what did you go with? Did you interview cleaners? Did you go with like a bigger company like Mary Maids for a while? Like what worked for you?
So the bigger companies don't typically like Airbnb,
Okay.
and they're very expensive. It's really hard to cash flow if you're paying $700 a month in cleaning fees for your 1 bedroom, 1 bath, because that's what you would pay probably with Mary Maids.
Okay.
Nothing against, I actually don't know anything about them. I'm not hating on Mary Maids.
I just threw it out there, I've never.
Nextdoor.com has been awesome. You get, what I really want to do is I want to, it's hard to get somebody to drive somewhere for less than $50. And so I interview people on Nextdoor.com. Ideally, it's somebody who just needs a little bit of extra cash, who has cleaning experience in the neighborhood. But you really have to burn through a lot of these types of people until you find one who's really good, and then you pay them a lot of money. Or more than they would be making otherwise.
How do you know, that's kind of a stupid question, how do you know if they're good at cleaning until they clean some?
I have a really high standard for, I don't know, when you know something's clean, you know it's clean. Like, are the corners of the bathroom scrubbed out? Is all the stainless steel polished, you know, with ammonia or
So
chrome
just
cleaner?
Observe whatever they do.
How, yeah, their attention to detail. You know, you'd be amazed how many people clean the whole house, and then they'll leave like an old banana on the counter and leave and lock it up. You know, it's like, honestly, like, shout out to all my friends over the past 5 years, because I really couldn't have done it without like people at least building this business, like people in my life who luckily wanted extra money to help, but it was really just kind of like a ragtag group of us for a while. I know a lot of people in the restaurant industry who only work nights, so that was really helpful, people who needed extra cash. Everything has to be a hotel standard of clean, and a lot of the times the kind of person, like the cleaning lady that maybe, that comes to people's house like every 2 weeks or 1 week, they're not going to have the same attention to detail that you need with Airbnb. I need my beds folded military style, perfectly pressed every time, things like that. So, and honestly, I'm still, when it comes to managing employees and when it comes to, creating these organized systems and holding people accountable for them, I'm definitely still learning. But trial and error, you find a good person, then you pay them
So
$25
like
an hour.
go in after they clean and
Yes,
then check.
definitely
before.
double check. Yep. And even now, I'm creating these systems to automate everything, and I'm still having my operations manager double check everyone. So his job is to essentially just check all the boxes. Yes, this place is ready to go, because I'm still just not comfortable taking. And maybe that's something I should work on. Maybe that's an inefficiency where I should give up this control. But I've just had so many experiences with, you get that one bad review because a very particular person saw something that they don't want. It could cost you thousands of dollars. So it's worth it for me to have somebody on payroll who's making sure everything is up to that standard.
Just to piggyback on this a little bit, so you mentioned furnishings, and I guess what are some of your go-tos? You said.
Craigslist?
Furnishing,
Oh,
Craigslist.
go ahead, I'm sorry, finish.
No, I was gonna say, like, I guess where do you like to go? What do you look for?
Yeah, IKEA makes this one futon that is so perfect. You can see it in my pages if you look at some of my, I want to have a pull-out couch in every living room, and futons are just better because if you want a pull-out that people aren't going to complain about, you're going to pay $4,000 or $5,000 for it. So IKEA and I'll look it up and I can tell you, but there's a certain model of futon that's inexpensive and actually very comfortable and durable. I like a nice leather couch too, because they don't stain. I do a lot of estate sales. I do a lot of Craigslist. I really enjoy like the hunt and the challenge of. I can make an apartment look really nice for $1,000. IKEA is usually my last stop. That's the kind of stuff that I just didn't have time to. I'm not gonna Craigslist, a spatula and stuff like that. So depending on where you're at in your life, I think a lot of people probably would just go to IKEA and furnish the place and be done with it. For me, I'm gonna hold on to this property for a long time. I'm gonna take an afternoon and I'm gonna try to get like cool, unique things. That's the other thing. People who stay in Airbnbs, they could stay at a hotel, but I think a lot of them just want a different sort of vibe. So I'm going to thrift stores to get like weird art to put up. Obviously, mattresses have to be comfortable. I will buy used mattresses, but it's got to come out of a nice estate, Or if you buy a mattress on Craigslist, if you do Craigslist much, you really judge the person more than the item. So if you pull up and it's this like sketchy dude who's trying to sell you a motorcycle, you just say no thank you, even though it's a nice motorcycle. If you come into a really clean home and some nice old lady just doesn't know what to do with the mattress and it's in perfect condition, I'll buy a used one, but I'm particular.
Where do you get your new ones?
Where have I got it? Have I ever bought a new mattress, honestly? There's a place on University in Snelling. I saw a sign once for I don't know, I bought a couple on a deal there, but I'm trying to think. I have bought new IKEA mattresses, don't recommend it, really uncomfortable. I've had complaints from mattresses before, and I'll put a memory foam down. You can get a memory foam at Target for like an $80 roll for a queen size bed. What's funny is that with all the weird, stupid little things people complain about, I don't hear about mattresses very often, so I must lucked out.
What's the most common complaint you hear?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think. Well, everyone knows the 80-20 rule. The most common complaint I hear right now is about one particular property that causes me 80% of the stress in my life that I just it needs to go. I would say this place doesn't feel clean.
Is it just older, so it's hard?
It's older. It's
dated.
Yep. It's like I've done everything I can to the place, and it is clean. You could eat off the floor when somebody checks in, but this particular apartment I'm speaking on now, I signed a lease on it back when not a lot of people were willing to work with me. Mm-hmm. Well, now I've got all these options, so that's why I'm probably going to nix it when my lease comes up to renew.
Which one is this?
Oh, you want to check it out? It's Charming Merriam Park Flat.
Okay.
And there is some brutal reviews in there, for sure. But, the reason why I have it year after year is that thing stays, the occupancy is like, you can look at the calendar. I think I've had maybe 21 nights of vacancy over the past year. It just cash flows so well because it's a cheap monthly rental in a good location. No, that's a really good question, and I apologize. I'm kind of blanking. I think it's just generally. I think it's people who had a certain expectation. They thought they were booking a vacation place, and they came in and it was a furnished apartment, and that's nothing that I did wrong necessarily, but and you can look. I don't really have many bad reviews, but
What are things that you found early on that people were asking for, complaining that you started doing on every one?
okay, that's
Right?
good.
So like, you know,
Towels, really nice towels in every place. Now I use a linen service. It's called Boxer Home, I believe, Bokser. I actually rent all my linens from this guy now. It's actually a really good deal. I pay like $25 a month per unit, and in one unit I get 3 sets of sheets, so 6 sheets total, flat and fitted. I get 2 duvet covers, a ton of towels, really nice high quality stuff where if I was buying them individually, they'd be like $99 sheets. So yeah, in the beginning I think I was just skimping on things all the time. I was just such a penny pincher, as a new business, didn't have a lot of money. But now I just buy something nice because it's a one-time expense, and you know, getting like room essentials from Target, sheets and towels, is a shortcut to saving money for a second, and then
getting complaints.
and
or
then
comments.
getting and then yeah, you just don't want it to feel cheap. So
It's called Boxer what?
I believe Boxer Home. I can double check on that. Yes.
Where does your business lie in form of taxes? What kind of the income? How are you taxed that at? And when you started as an individual versus when you moved on to business?
Yeah.
Can you explain how the transition?
Yeah, and so one of my goals, and I should be better protected. I should have my leases in an LLC. That's one of my goals for 2020 when it comes to getting organized. Right now, the sublet income is Schedule E. You can't claim depreciation, but you can't deduct depreciation on an apartment that you rent and then re-rent, but it's still rental income. Obviously any property you own is just rental income. And then if I have a management contract with someone, that's like a 1099 through Airbnb, and that maybe Tim can tell me if I'm wrong or not.
It sounds right to me.
Yeah.
Because it's not rental income, right? You're providing a service to
Right.
your business. Yeah.
But in a perfect world, I would have an LLC, and when you create an Airbnb profile, you can create one for a business. So what I should have, and one of my goals, is to have an LLC for managing Airbnbs with a separate taxpayer ID. Re-sign these leases if I choose to with an LLC and have that be a separate entity, and then property that I own, each of those be separate entities.
Most likely your landlords would probably allow you to switch them into an LLC now because you have a relationship for a long time.
Yes.
So if you're like, hey, I want to protect myself, can we switch this? I'll still guarantee the lease or something. And then at least you'll have that if you want.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, kind of.
So yeah, mostly Schedule E, and for your purposes, it'll be rental income.
And from more like protection, have you had any time you had to claim with Airbnb or stuff like that? Because I know they insure
Yeah.
like $1 million and stuff like that. But.
I'm glad you asked that. Dealing with Airbnb and getting your security deposit is a nightmare. It's horrible. It's basically a number that they don't even authorize their credit card. So I have security deposits ranging from like $500 to $2,000, I think. They don't hold the money. They don't even authorize a credit card for that amount. You basically have to file a claim with Airbnb. You need to document everything. You need to have some sort of invoice or proof. You know, the worst thing people do is that they damage by smoking. Smoking in your house drives you crazy. And I can usually get hefty cleaning fees, but it takes a lot of phone calls, it takes a lot of email. Airbnb doesn't necessarily make it easy. That's why I focus so much on getting these long-term quality rentals, because another thing I should mention, if you take anything out of this talk at all, is you don't rent to local people for periods of time under 14 days. For any reason, really. And if they want to stay, you know, you feel people out. You based on grammar a lot of the time. Generally speaking, people who are really well spoken treat the properties a lot better than somebody who just sends you a message like, "Can I stay here tonight?" in all lowercase. But yeah, I would be interested in. I've thought this before about maybe taking an additional, like an actual security deposit from somebody. You know, if somebody wants to move in for 30 days and they have legitimate reasons to be here for 30 days, they should be okay with giving some sort of deposit. And so I have thought about maybe certain systems I could implement to actually hold on to real money rather than have it, you know, in limbo with Airbnb.
Doesn't VRBO like actually charge? I feel like when I've seen
VRBO
it, they charge
does.
the credit cards and then
Yep.
they refund it.
Yep. Yeah, and when I say Airbnb, I'm speaking in general terms of this whole short-term rental thing. I use VRBO. The VRBO interface is just not my friend. And I'm not a tech guy, you know? Like Jordan was like, yeah, I mean, if you can put a PowerPoint together, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'll have time. But like really, I just haven't used PowerPoint since middle school probably.
It didn't exist when
But VRBO's interface is so bad that I use it every day and I still don't really know how to use it. And it's glitchy, it's weird, they change it all the time. They must be putting all of their resources into marketing because it's like they've got commercials during football games, but their interface, I tried to put a client's apartment on VRBO the other day and it was so glitchy it just wouldn't let me to get to the last submit page. It kept showing an error. And then there's like a commercial for VRBO going on like HBO or Netflix at the time. But yes, VRBO does actually hold the money, and I know a lot. I think my opinion might be the minority. I know a lot of owners prefer VRBO. I just find Airbnb so user friendly. I can tweak my pricing and availability so easily from my phone at any time, and it's easy. That I've actually never run into a VRBO guest where I had to claim damages, just because I do 95% Airbnb, so I don't have experience. But I'm guessing that it's a lot easier. Yes?
So you do help people co-hosting their Airbnbs, right?
I do, yep.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what you do, how you help people accomplish that?
Yeah, so...
And for your 20 to 40% charge,
right.
what are the services that people can get?
So, on a 20% deal, it would be a pretty much turnkey and ready to go. You know, I'm going to act as a consultant of sorts where I'm going to help you get your pictures, help you get organized. But it's a nice property that I can tell is not going to be a headache for me. That is fairly ready to go. It's already furnished. It's got all the household items and stuff. And it's going to profit enough to be worth my time. I will do some 25-30% deals on similar situations where I just know the revenue isn't going to be as high. So a lot of the times, it's just as much trouble for me to manage a nice, 5-bedroom home as it is a 1-bedroom apartment, in a sense, especially if I'm delegating all of the housekeeping tasks. So I may charge a smaller percentage for a property that's going to have much more revenue. If you give me a lake home on Minnetonka with 8 bedrooms, maybe 10% would work just fine for that. I've done 40% before where I'm furnishing the whole place myself. I'm doing all the legwork. I'm driving my truck all over the place, getting it furnished. So if you came to me with a unfurnished yet clean property in a nice location that I was interested in managing, but you didn't want to do anything, and we could see that even after my 40% cut, you are going to either net more at the end of the year, or maybe you have certain goals that just don't involve, you don't want a long-term tenant, you want to make money for 4 months, that's it. Then that would be closer to a 40%. I can tell you I've made so many Airbnb deals in the last 5 years and no two are the same. And it really just depends on the amount of effort and the goals of the owner. And I think I should also say, well, I strive to really only, if I'm working for you and I'm managing your property, you're only getting a phone call when something bad has happened that needs the owner's attention.
Do you also take care of the listings, reservation, bookings, everything?
Yep.
Okay. So
Yep.
it's whoever works with you is probably hands off, and you're going to take on.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. You would get a call in any situation where a traditional tenant might call you. I like to think that I'm a lot more self-sufficient than an average tenant. You know, like I can fix things that an average tenant won't. I'm not gonna, turn into a plumber for the afternoon all the time, but I will on occasion. Do things like that. But yeah, I strive to make, I strive to make my clients' lives, really your life shouldn't change at all other than the amount of money you're making every month is higher than it used to be.
Does that also include cleaning fees?
Yep, so I would retain all cleaning fees. So in your apartment, your 1 bedroom, 1 bath, we'd probably be charging $75 cleaning fees. That would probably cost me roughly $60 in labor. The difference on the margin would go into linens, laundry. It's really tailor made to whatever you want. If you want to do flowers, you want to do fruit, which I recommend. That would all be built into that per guest cleaning fee.
In those like 30 to 90 day rentals, how often do you clean?
Once, yeah. It's not like a hotel where we're gonna run by and spruce the place up for you. I'm guessing that in the higher end, in more tourist destinations, that they have, we're going to Costa Rica in a week, and those places, they'll come in and, make the beds and stuff for you. The Twin Cities, I don't know if anyone's doing that. But, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yep. Do you have any sort of checklist for your renters that they have to go through when they check in or check out?
I don't necessarily have a checklist. I have like a welcome note that some properties have a quirk. Like I've got one oven that's one of those really old school ovens you light with a match, So if there's any like weird stuff about the place, I let them know. Wi-Fi, help yourself to anything in the pantry, fridge, welcome, like a house manual essentially. Check out, turn off the lights, lock up. If you adjusted the heater, the AC, please turn it back. I think that's about it, but not like an organized checklist of any kind. Just more of like a suggested note that people sometimes follow, sometimes they don't.
How about insurance?
Yeah.
For your own.
Yeah. So I have renter's insurance on all of the apartments that I rent, although I'm not naive to the fact that I don't know what renter's insurance would say to me if I call them and they, if we get into a situation, I don't know how valuable it is, but it makes me feel better for $12 a month. Airbnb has a really good liability policy, and I do know one person who, I've fortunately never had to use it, but I know someone who has, and she had major water damage, and they did pay out. I carry, a homeowner's policy, and my insurance agent knows what I'm doing, and we had to adjust some things. But I am not an expert on insurance, and I highly recommend you do your own research because I could probably be doing more. And it's a common question. So, Airbnb says we have a liability policy up to $1 million. Who knows if that's just marketing, if they've ever paid out more than, who knows, but definitely do your own research on that.
So if I'm looking to rent out a property, you're kind of the property manager of Airbnb? Kind of how?
If you own a property, yes, yeah, I'm your property manager, but obviously I'm much more involved than the average property manager because from the weeks leading up before they come to the whole time during they're there, somebody's got to be in constant communication with these people. And I would say if there's one, like my main value add to you is revenue and maximizing revenue.
Okay.
That is really where if you're new to Airbnb and you don't have years of experience making the most, you know, of tweaking pricing, availability, all kinds of things, pictures, you would probably, my 20 to 30% is being made up by my expertise, at least in the beginning.
Okay.
I'm not at all I'm not doing anything that's rocket science that you couldn't learn, you know, with some trial and error.
Okay, so you're kind of a coach, or can be like a coach / property manager. more or
Yeah,
less.
and that it brings me to another goal I have for 2020 is an idea where, you know, I kind of get the place going and then completely hand it off. You know, we know other people in the business of managing Airbnbs. I'm not the only person who does this, believe it or not. And I really love the aspect of setting it up, of finding the property, of marketing it and pricing it and everything. But I would be certainly open to a deal where I help you get it going, show you everything I know, and then I walk away, you know.
Have you found, do you do strictly like, because you're in just the Twin Cities, right?
Yes.
Do you do strictly Minneapolis, or do you do like the suburbs and the outskirts, or like what's your kind of niche?
I'm
area?
all over St. Paul. I used to be
Okay.
spread out more, and I just like to be, I know St. Paul really well, I know every block and neighborhood really well. And Cathedral Hill, great neighborhood, one of my favorite neighborhoods in the Twin Cities, those do really well. Marion Park is great because you can jump to Minneapolis so quickly, you can jump to St. Paul, plus you're in that kind of Mac Groveland feel of a neighborhood. I think that Dayton's Bluff would be a great place for Airbnb if you got a really attractive block. I'm not over there yet, but you know, those nice pockets of where the neighborhoods we can still find good deals is where I would be looking. I'm on the west side bluff of St. Paul. That house does really well. It's a really attractive neighborhood, and yet the home prices are still pretty reasonable. West 7th Street is another, you know, soon there's going to be a light rail that goes right, that's still going, right? Streetcars, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about soon, but it's in the works. It's going to be some sort of rail system that connects the airport to downtown St. Paul. Somebody correct me if that got overruled.
I think they were talking about it early last year. I don't know if it was anything ever.
They've already spent like millions on development, so I hope that they do something.
Well,
Would you be open to finding someone a house to buy, selling it because you're the agent, making the commission on it, and then managing it for Airbnb?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely. That's like a great scenario for me.
I figured I could, you know, add value to you, and then you can.
Yeah.
Because I'd be open to that.
Absolutely.
I'm just looking for something to buy right now, and there's, you know, not a lot out there.
Yeah, we should talk. Absolutely.
I mean, I have an agent, but he wouldn't have any hurt feelings. I mean,
He probably would, but
I don't have a signed contract or anything like that.
Oh,
Sure.
He doesn't.
Yeah, and like I said, I would never advise an agent. I would never advise a client to buy an Airbnb property. You're buying a property where, you know, you're going to have an exit strategy. It's going to work as a long-term rental, but if you want to maximize your revenue through Airbnb and also make a smart long-term decision, then that's something.
Yeah. Would you recommend doing a duplex Airbnb?
Yeah, I mean, the more units you have, generally, the better you're going to cash flow in general. And you know, a really good scenario would be to buy a duplex, find a tenant who's willing to take care of the housekeeping on the other side. I know people who do things like that. And so you have that steady rental income that's hopefully covering your expenses, and then Airbnb is kind of like the frosting on the cake. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of different avenues. There's a million different combinations of deals you could do that would work in all sorts of different properties. So
So you said you look for high quality, long-term tenants. Is there any other ways that you're finding people other than like they're writing in all low caps with no punctuation, or?
Reviews.
Okay.
You're looking for somebody, I mean, and ideally,
What
they're
if
gonna
somebody
have.
didn't have a review? Like, I don't know, like I've stayed in
I
lots
try
of
to-
Airbnbs, never long-term, but like,
I
I
try
don't
to-
know if I've been reviewed, maybe.
Yeah,
I
every
think I
time
look at
you stay,
review.
every time
Sure,
you stay
it
there,
does
they
say
review
like
your
you've been
stuff.
reviewed, you need to review them. I should look at mine.
Yeah, I mean, you don't always get reviews. Some hosts are lazy and they're not gonna review.
Yeah.
Did you review everyone?
I don't always. No. And why don't I review everyone? Sometimes I just don't really know. I've you know, somebody, obviously I get a call if they, I always review when there's a problem so that other hosts will know. And if I had personal contact with them and I saw the level of how they left the house, I'll leave a glowing review. You know, if someone was really cool and they really did thoughtful things, I probably review most people, but I don't think I get to everyone.
And so if somebody didn't have any reviews, would you not let them
So
stay?
I try to look for a legitimate reason for being in the Twin Cities. If I hear, hey, I'm gonna be a resident at Regions Hospital, and myself and my husband are looking to the Twin Cities as an option. We love your house. He's on a 65-day contract. Blah blah blah. That's legitimate, and they're gonna be great.
And otherwise, like you have turned people down?
Yeah, I turned someone down this morning. I turn people down all the time.
Huh.
If somebody just needs a place to live for a while, what's wrong with your house? You know.
So do you ask them, why do you need a place to live?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I had a lady, I was on a road trip and I was renting out my place on Airbnb, and I get a request from somebody that they just want to stay tonight, and this is at 1 a.m. I get a request to stay tonight, and it's a 3-bedroom house that I was renting out on Airbnb. Is it just you? Well, yeah, I might have a few friends stop by. And I said, no way. And I called Airbnb and said, hey, don't count this against me. This person didn't have an ID verified, all kinds of stuff. Just huge red flags. So I used to do a bit of Airbnb, and I've turned people down before when it's just sketchy. You just get a feeling that it's sketchy. Somebody tries to book at 1 a.m. if they don't have a really good story.
Yeah. You go with your gut.
Yeah.
I've met people at the door to check them in. I used to check people in person more often just because I was I was new to it. I was paranoid. And one time I pulled up on these guys, and you could tell they had maybe like just smoked a bowl in the car, which is like, that doesn't mean they're a bad person. Whatever, you smoke weed, that's fine. And then I shook his hand, and it was like sweaty. And I'm like, why did he have a sweaty hand? And then I was just like, you're not staying here tonight. And they were so pissed off, and I am still fine with that decision. And maybe they were fine, and I'm not like some straight edge weirdo, like, oh, you smoke weed, you can't live here, but he had a sweaty hand, man.
Sweaty hand.
And like, I don't know, you just gave me a vibe. So trust your gut, and
And then what do you do for keys? Like, I would imagine on
Yeah.
yours that you do have like a number
I've got
code?
key codes on certain properties. I've got a really low tech key under the mat on another property.
That's really
Which
good.
property?
You know,
Realtors have lockboxes?
I know. I've got lock boxes. Yeah, it's just the key under the mat is just my own laziness, and it works. I don't know. I mean, I can't justify
If you're
it.
thinking about doing something, don't mail the person a key, because I can admit to being the idiot who was in Florida driving to our Airbnb and said, oh shit, I left the key at home in Minnesota. Calling our Airbnb guy.
Oh, and she mailed you a key?
They mailed us a key.
That's the worst system
and
I've
I
ever heard
left
of.
it in Minnesota, and I realized at 10
Yeah,
o'clock
what
at
happened? How many
night,
keys you have
driving
up there,
all
right?
3 kids and us to the Airbnb in Florida, that I didn't have the key with me.
I highly recommend key code systems,
Yeah,
and that's what I'm doing
don't-
mostly, and eventually they'll all be on key codes. Then you can change the code if
Right.
need be, worst case scenario. Excuse me, don't drink LaCroix and speak publicly. Key codes are great, yes?
You can get, I don't know where you find one, but I've seen it, like a plastic, looks like a rock, and it's got like a thing on the back.
I've used those. Yep, the hide a key rock, I believe it's called.
I'll just say,
Trademark.
I'm using August if anybody is interested. So it's basically smart lock, it attaches onto your existing deadbolt, and then
Really?
it
I've seen
just-
those. Yep.
It's just, yeah, you can, and then you can do it yourself from your phone, from Wi-Fi, if you connect it up to your Wi-Fi, and then you can share, like, you can distribute a temporary guest code that expires,
Oh.
and then you just do it when you need it.
Yep. Ideally, you should have, you know, there's all sorts of like Ring, I think is one of them. There's camera systems. I do as I say, not as I do. You know, you should have a camera. You should have a key code. You should know if 18 people just walked in the house rather than the 2 that said they were going to stay. Yes.
I was gonna say, I'm kind of glad that you switched to the topic about, you told people that, no, you're not staying here. I know Airbnb kind of came under some fire for potential discrimination due to protected classes. So I kind of wanted to know if you had any experience with that. And this is kind of an offshoot to this topic, but do you have cameras in any of your, rentals, and what's your take on that?
I don't have cameras anywhere. I would recommend to anyone, and I'm looking into just a camera like in the
Cameras in the common areas and like.
You mean like
As in
kitchen?
like living room or? Or
Like hallway.
Okay.
It was like a, oh gosh.
The main hallway, that was
Yeah.
the main
Yeah.
entrance, so that was it.
Yeah, at the entrance and the main hallway, I think. I don't know, but I had cameras.
I think that anyone should do whatever they're comfortable with, but I think a camera in a property is going to make enough people uncomfortable that it's going to cause more problems than it's going to solve.
Do they have to like disclose if they've got a?
That's what I thought when
You do.
he told us, he goes, oh, I saw you guys come in at 2. And we're like, you didn't tell us there was a camera on this property, so I didn't know
Maybe.
weird about that.
But,
here
it
you
wasn't
do if
in
you
like the,
need
it
to
wasn't in the
disclose.
sleeping area or anything like that, so.
Disclose
That
all
we
external
know.
entities.
That's what he wants you to say.
Nice
so-
pajama print.
Yeah, like that would be creepy.
Yeah.
And then as far as the discrimination piece, Airbnb recently, you don't see anyone's profile picture
Okay.
anymore, so that you can't discriminate against a race or whatever based on what the person looks like.
Sure.
Which I'm sure is good because me traveling as a fine, a white person privilege where people assume that you're a good person, I guess. I can't imagine the frustration, being looking different way and having that discrimination. Some people will do like the mirror selfie for their picture, and that's the one thing I miss that you can't, but I guess that's discrimination, but
A mirror selfie.
like sometimes you get a profile picture of somebody and they just don't look trustworthy, and it doesn't have anything to do with race. It's just you took this picture, in a. I'm losing my words here.
There's enough selfies online that just because someone has a picture of themselves, that doesn't even mean it's them, right?
Yeah,
so, yeah.
you do this enough, and you host enough people, and you see patterns, and the kind of person who has a headshot as their profile picture is generally going to be a great guest, and the kind of person who's got a picture like this with their friends at a bar might not be a good guest. So I miss being able to see the profile picture, but I understand why they did what they had to do. Yes.
Did you have to take any rental license or, sign any papers with the city, get it permitted and
Yep.
all that stuff with your rentals?
So if you already have a certificate of occupancy, you're fine. Otherwise, if you don't live there, you're gonna have to get one, and the city's gonna make sure that you're up to code just like a normal rental property. It's like it's like $79 a year, and it's really easy in St. Paul. It's like a one-man department at the city. You give them your application. You have to prove that you're insured. And that's about all there is to it. Pay and renew year after year.
This is St. Paul and Minneapolis.
I'm not.
Had experience in
No, Minneapolis is a little different.
Yeah, and I haven't, maybe Tim could share, I haven't managed a Minneapolis place since when the Super Bowl came. That's when both cities came together and we're like, we have to regulate this thing. And I've been so St. Paul focused since that happened that I don't have any experience dealing with Minneapolis, but.
Currently, I mean, Minneapolis obviously could change, but currently if you have a rental license through the rental department, you're good to go. But if you are living in the property, you're not required to have a rental license unless you short-term rental. Meaning, so if you had a duplex or even a single family and you just rented it out, to long-term rental, there's no license required. But if it's a short-term rental, you have to get a license just like as if you didn't live there.
What would it take for you to be willing to manage in Minneapolis?
Oh, I am starting to manage in Minneapolis. So it's really just based on whether, if I make a decision whether I want to be a part of a property, it's based on the person, the location, the property, all sorts of things. But Minneapolis is, I'm okay with going there.
Okay.
Yeah.
How often are you personally going to a property?
Currently, way too often.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that, does that answer
So
your
this-
question?
so-
How
so-
often? I'm probably going in 75% of the time before a guest checks in.
Okay.
25.
Because you don't trust the cleaners?
Because since I do so much long term, when somebody's there for 30 or 60 days, there's just usually something that needs to be attended to. And like I said, delegating this kind of thing to someone else is a big part of my goals for next year. But yeah, honestly, I don't trust the cleaners. I don't like that phrasing so much, but just as like quality control is a nicer way of saying
Trust but
it.
verify.
Well, and if you're providing,
Trust but verify.
Yeah.
who's doing the fruit? Do you do that or do you have the cleaners do it?
I'll do it occasionally. Cleaners do it a lot of the time. I was just talking with the operations guy today and thinking about doing Amazon, Whole Foods, when they check out, and we're not exactly sure if we can get it delivered in the right time frame. But yeah, the cleaner will pick it up or I'll pick it up on occasion. And it's worth too, when your median stay is 30 days, going to the grocery store to get the flowers and fruit, to make that great first impression, for me and my schedule now, it's becoming less and less worth it. But for 3 or 4 years of doing this, it was completely worth it. So I've missed you a couple times. Go ahead.
So, do you have this set up so that when you're out of town that you can at least have somebody covering you for all this stuff?
Yeah. So the guy that I keep talking about who's going to start to kind of deal with the day-to-day, and the way we're structuring this is that I'm going to deal with the guest everything up until they check in, and once they check in, they're not going to have my phone number, they're not going to really deal with me at all. He's going to deal with the guests as they're staying. So when I've gone out of town in the past, I've paid friends to cover for me before. This guy in particular, I'm giving him a flat rate. I'm going to Costa Rica for a month and a half on the 10th. I'm giving him a flat rate to basically be my responsible party and to be on call all the time. And then he's going to, we agreed upon an hourly rate, and if his hours exceed what I've paid him, then I'll continue to pay him more. In a perfect world for him, he'll only work, for 4 hours while I'm gone, and make a decent amount of money. The reality is that he'll probably work close to 20 hours while I'm gone. But yeah, I mean, hiring a co-host or a manager would be, if you travel a lot, is completely necessary. Or, friends, family, a lot of people, just a neighbor, maybe.
I guess I have a comment. We did our first, I don't know what you call it, like hands off, where we had everybody take care of stuff, and we were gone for like a month. And so we everything was fine except for when, our alarm that we had set for 3 AM to go to the airport, to get up and go to the airport, was going off, and then finally after about 2 weeks, somebody commented on it. So I guess the thing, and then I called a friend and then had him crawl through the window, the upstairs window to shut it off, and I think it probably took him about a week to get over there. But, so one of the lessons is have a separate lockbox somewhere and have keys to like all parts of the property.
Mm-hmm.
Just for a worst case scenario, like, you know, your utility room, your, you know, doors for different units, doors for the garage, just so that you
Yeah.
can call somebody and it's right there for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about like the initial conversation with a potential guest and getting them to the point of booking, and like how many guests you actually talk to get to a booked.
That's a good question. Yeah, I'd probably convert, and again, I have higher standards for length and price rather than somebody who's just trying to fill in a weekend. But I probably talk to 4 different inquiries for every booking.
Okay.
So being really responsive, really informative. People like that in a host. Like if I'm staying somewhere and I send a request and they get back to me in a second, I'm like, oh, it's a responsive host. He's probably a responsible guy. I'm not going to mind staying there. But
And how many responses back and forth do you go through?
you know what you get is you get a lot of people looking for a deal. You get a lot of people like, hey, our budget is $900 a month. We want to be here for the summer. No, I'm sorry, we can't do that. It's a lot of that.
Oh, okay.
People looking for
Longer.
deals.
Yep.
So you really have to stay on top of it, or pay someone to stay on top of it, if you want to maximize revenue. And then as far as, because I hear people like you just said, like you called Airbnb because you were worried, and this is very common, about, you know, denying people and having that affect your rating. I deny people all the time. My places are full. So, I don't think that, and I'm not actually pressing decline. I'm just unable to provide them in what they want in a place, or unable to give them the price that they want. So I don't think that the Airbnb algorithm is really stacked that against hosts who want guests with good reviews, who have legitimate reasons. And there's a legitimate reason to be paranoid. I've got a friend who, her husband is on a task force with the St. Paul police, and there's definitely a lot of like criminal, Airbnb is being used in unsavory ways for criminal activity, for sure. So, better to be overly cautious than be worried about, you know, oh, if I don't accept this person, you know, just go with your gut instinct. Yes.
How many repairs, or I mean, like if you have someone stay for 90 days, how often are you doing more than just cleaning? Are you doing maintenance on stuff or light repairs?
That's a common
touch-up
question, a
cleaning?
common concern, an objection with owners is all this wear and tear, people in and out. I don't think there's any difference in wear and tear with a different person living there every month. And I think long-term tenants can create a lot worse of damage. Anyone who has had long-term tenants who've done a ton of damage. And generally speaking, people tend to leave when they a lot of these guests are staying in a home and they feel like, oh, I'm in your home. You know, I even keep like some family pictures of myself in one of my houses, because what I've figured out is people feel like they're staying in my house. And then a lot of the times mom or dad will have done all the laundry before they leave. And they've already like Swiffered and cleaned up because they're like, Adam was so nice for letting us stay here.
Sure.
You know?
Okay.
What was your original question? Oh, wear and tear. Yeah, I mean, you do the same amount of repairs as you would with any other.
And so when you're buying these, do you own any, or are you just subletting?
I own 2 single-family homes.
Can't stop looking at her.
But yeah, subletting 4 and then management contracts on 3 at the moment, but always, you know, negotiating new deals all the time. So.
Have you thought about doing it in a different state, like Wisconsin or Illinois?
I've thought about trying to do it in Costa Rica or Puerto Rico,
Okay.
because I frequent both of those places, and but not in another state. I know people who do, Tyler. We know a guy who's got places in Vegas and Vail. I see enough. There's enough money to be made here, and it seems way easier.
Yeah.
That why I'm not trying to have a place in Vegas. If anything, I'd like a place somewhere warm where I can have an agreement with the owner where I can Airbnb this place, where I basically pay rent in another country, and then I have a place to go when I visit these places to get away from winter, and even if I break even at the end of the year. Also, in other countries, labor is so much cheaper. You can get really good housekeeping and maintenance services for, the American dollar goes really far.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mess with another state, personally.
And then do you recommend doing a sublease or owning the home?
If I can cash flow without having to own something, I'd rather do that, personally. I realize I'm not building wealth, I realize I'm not paying down a loan, but I can set something up with really no contract where I'm making, I don't like calling it passive income because it's so not passive, but I am risk and liability adverse. And so although I invest in real estate, and I will continue to do so, right now I'm more focused on cash flow without having to own.
What do you think is the future then for Twin Cities Airbnb market?
I don't know. I'm sure that it will be dramatically affected by the real estate market, and the rental market in general. I don't see it going away because it's always anything that takes more labor and more resources is gonna cost more, period. So Airbnb costs more labor than a traditional renter. So Airbnb will then, should always make more money than, but there may be some economic periods of reckoning, where it's a little dicey. But I think in the long term, there's always going to be that margin between a 12-month unfurnished lease and an Airbnb, and as long as I can be within there, it'll be worth it.
What all do you furnish besides furniture and beds? I mean, what do you include?
Anything that you would need to cook a nice dinner for your family.
So plates and cups and
Yep.
utensils and towels and all that stuff.
Picture you're coming with a family of 5 to spend a week over Thanksgiving.
Okay.
What are you gonna want?
A full house. Okay.
So containers to store food too, stuff like that?
Yeah, I've got Tupperware in all my places. I order shampoo, body wash, and lotion from hotel supply companies.
Oh, so you supply that as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, all paper products, obviously toilet paper, paper towels.
Sure.
Yeah, I like to put, like sparkling water in the fridge, and you can go to Trader Joe's and get a case of wine for like $35, and apparently it's not horrible tasting, so they get a bottle of that. So. Anyone else? So anyhow, this is my info. I'm happy to talk to anyone at any time if you just want advice. If you're interested in networking, I've got all sorts of ideas that I can't do on my own, and so I'd love to collaborate with anyone, whether it's, just sharing information or otherwise, anything in between. So that's all I got.
Thanks, man.
Cool, thanks.
Thanks for coming, guys. Definitely write down his info here, and like he said, he's always open for questions. But stay around here for a bit too if you have anything. We will be at a flip house here in about 2 weeks in St. Paul. So we're doing a meetup at a flip that's been finished, and they're going to go through that and tell you guys how they did it and what went into it and what they're hoping to make off of it. They haven't sold it yet, so it'll be a good time. It's a guy I've seen some houses, and he does a good job. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Where in Costa Rica are you going?
Uvita, do you know Costa Rica at all?
Yeah, I spent 10 days there with my wife.
Oh, cool.
So I don't know that